What have you got to say about this story?
There's so much to say about this story. First of all, one of the most fascinating aspects of it is the manner to which Mary is doing a counter-Eve situation. Because it's such a weird thing. If you read just the narrative, she says, change this water into wine, and Jesus says, I'm not ready to die yet.
Right.
What? And so she is actually acting like she's tempting her son to his death.
To his fate, to his destiny.
That's what Eve does to Adam. Eve tempts Adam to his death. She's doing the same, but it's a completely flipped situation where it's like he's going to reveal his glory in his death. His death is going to be the redeeming of Adam. It's going to flip the Adam story completely upside down. But it's still, she's the one who's opening the door for him.
And it's in service of the celebration of a wedding.
That's right. Well, that's the mystery.
The wedding of heaven and earth.
It is. It's the mystery of the role that Mary plays, because she also ends up being a bride character.
Why don't you say the wedding of heaven and earth?
Right, but I think it's a strong biblical motif of the God of Israel wants to marry his people. This remarkable claim in Isaiah. He wants his people not just to worship him, he wants to become the bridegroom. And so this is the God of Israel coming as bridegroom.
Marriage is the reintegration of the original Adam, too. There's that way of conceptualizing it, right? If the ideal human
flesh.
Right.
Yeah.
And they shall be as
exactly, exactly.
Isn't
one of
he
the
also
things about
the wine?
life.
Isn't he also the wine?
The Eucharist.
That is to come.
Yeah.
He's
But
the
it's
best
6
wine
jars.
that comes last.
It's a recreation as well. So it's like the 6 days of creation.
6 days of creation.
And he's beginning a new world. But the most interesting thing to me also related to how Mary does this is that Mary frames his ministry. She acts in a very feminine way. She basically asks the question, right? And this is in some ways, in terms of meaning, it's very important to understand that meaning opens the space for the Logos to participate itself. Like question, prayer. Like when you ask a question, what you're doing is you're opening a space for heaven.
Is that the gesture of humility? Ask a question?
It's chaos. Chaos is a what? What is this? What? And then heaven answers this.
Right, yeah.
And so she opens the frame. She asks a question. We go through this all the time. In some ways, in our lives, often in like my life, that's what my wife does. There's a problem.
Yeah.
And
it might be this, might be that.
It's like, what's the problem? There's a problem. Open the space. Now, what's your answer? Right? And so there's this weird thing in My Big Fat Greek Wedding. You probably heard this, where the woman says to her daughter, she says, the man is the head of the household, but the woman is the neck. She decides where the man looks. And this is what she's doing. She's saying, now, here's a problem.
And you're not supposed to provide the answer that just makes your wife happy. Right? You're supposed, because that's what Adam does. He tries to impress Eve by accepting her offer instead of doing what he's supposed to do, which is to name everything properly and put it in its proper place. Right? So that's, as far as I can tell, that's his prideful temptation, to look better than he is for the sake of, well, even domestic tranquility, but more to impress Eve. So,
the longing of Israel too. I always think that Mary embodies Israel, and like, well, Lord, how long? When will you come?
Yeah,
Lord, please. She's all the prophets, all the patriarchs, all of Israel, crying out to the Creator. Yeah, like act now. We need the new
grumbling, the question, the pleading.
Yeah, the pleading of Israel.
In light of the wedding issue, which I support Jordan's view on this and its centrality in the biblical view. So here is a thought that I'd like to share with you that is said as a matter of interest that might interest you.
Christ is a master at using short, mysterious stories. They change the listener who takes them seriously.
The person that you do not think could ever be virtuous, well, let me show you, this is the person who is fulfilling the law and the prophets.
I don't believe in that promise. I'll just be honest at this point.
Then it hit me. I saw it.
This Jew is very frightened of a post-Christian society.
The power of love.
I don't want to be in a Hallmark card, I tell you.
We've got our work cut out for us, gentlemen. I sure hope we're up to the task.
I'm prefacing it only because it's always the sensitive issue of the Jews not recognizing Jesus as the Messiah and the Son of God and so on. But I have always felt that one of the obstacles to the Jews at the time accepting Jesus was that he was a bachelor. Jews have no figures of heroic bachelors. And it's just a provocative, interesting thought for your consideration. That's all I'm throwing it out there. I don't know any of the rabbis of the Talmud who were bachelors, none of the great Jews from Moses on.
Jeremiah is celibate, isn't he?
Well, isn't he?
He takes a vow of celibacy.
He never ended up marrying, is that correct? Or,
I think so. I'd have to look at it again, but I think he takes a vow of celibacy.
Too. Okay, it's exceedingly rare.
But it's rare,
and
you're
it's
quite
certainly
right,
not the Jewish ideal. So I just
But the image is that this is what happens, this is the madness of the situation, is that just like Mary is a virgin, Christ's virginity or his celibacy is so that he becomes the bridegroom.
The bridegroom of the
And the actual word that's used is very striking.
The bridegroom of?
The world.
Of the world, of creation.
Right. I mean, he addresses her gune, woman, which can also mean wife in the Greek, but not as mother or mum. You know, it sets up the archetype. It sets up the invitation to think of her as a...
I mean, the kind of hieros gamos, that this is some sort of sacred marriage of...
Yeah.
People all my life have asked me about priestly celibacy. They're fascinated by it, right? And, you know, it's not something that's necessary in the priesthood. There have been, for a long time, priests weren't celibate. And there are different arguments we can make. I've always found that the most convincing one is Jesus was celibate. And the priest is meant to be an alter Christus. And so it's the celibacy of Jesus. That's what I would point to. There are more pragmatic arguments I could use. But it's like priesthood participating in the Christic form.
And it's a deeply sexual reality that at least is presented in the story of Jesus, is that he is going to become the bridegroom for the cosmos, and the relationship between Christ and the church is presented in St. Paul especially as this erotic relationship between Christ and the followers. And so it's not a celibacy in a kind of weird prudish way. It's rather this dedication of sexuality to something higher, which then kind of manifests itself cosmically.
So this is to the Christians present. If he were married, do you think it would have taken away from his message?
I mean, it didn't happen that way, so I don't know how to answer that question.
That's fine. It may be unimaginable.
Not his message, but I think there's symbolic dimension.
By the way, on behalf of the Catholic Church, I just want people watching to understand that marriage is a sacrament of your church.
Of course, yeah.
You know, people may not know that. They may think the only sacrament it is. Okay.
But it's also related to this idea of sacrifice, which is really important, that the sacrificial element that Christianity offers is life-giving. And so we say the life of the church is based in the martyrs, right? The life of the church is based in these ascetics. So downstream from the ascetic is actually families with 10 children and like huge burgeoning
service of life.
And so the sacrifice is like this pointing up, which looks like it's a negation, but it ends up being a seed that fills the rest of the world.
It's the highest union.
That's right. And so that's important because it's really the way it's understood.
There's a celibacy in marriage that's in service of life. And the celibacy in marriage is that you don't sleep with anyone else, right?
That's right.
Yeah, we say marriage is a cross.
There's another married man who says what I've said my whole life. The only difference between me and a priest is he can't have any woman, and I can't have any woman but one.
Right. All right, so let's turn to this next.
I wanted to ask Jonathan something.
Oh, yep, please
Jonathan,
go ahead.
You brought up a theme again, and you've done it multiple times, this idea of inversion. You've got something, here's an existing story, in the way Greg's talking about stories, right? And then it's being inverted, and Jesus is taking it and inverted. But you also speak of inversion elsewhere as something negative, right? And what's the difference between those two inversions?
So the difference in the case of Jesus is that the inversion that Jesus brings is a return. So it's basically, imagine there's a situation that brings you away from the garden, brings you away from holiness. Jesus flips it and then makes it into a return to the center. And so he's going to do that nonstop all through the story. Everything that he does, he does everything that happens in the garden, but he does it towards a return.
And the return is normatively...
He eats the fruit, he dies, he does all the things.
And the return is a normatively good thing to do.
It's a return towards the center, towards the seed, towards the meaning. Oh, yes.
And so the pejorative inversion would be something...
Towards the garden,
the negative inversion would be something that takes you further away from that.
That's right. That's the way that I was.
I just wanted to get clear on... Because you used both, these both, and I wanted to know which one was which.
Inversion in service of what? is
Yes,
the question.
yeah.